Tom, thanks for coming by. And yeah, let's talk. So you're originally from Southern California.
Yep.
We, us Wyomingites bash Californians all the time. But we were just talking. I've got California roots too, so it's okay. It's okay to be from California. But so you're from Southern California, originally, right outside LA. Is that right?
Yeah,
okay.
40 miles east of LA.
Okay.
Used to be a little town, about 17,000 people.
Okay.
Ontario, California. And it's got an interesting history. It was laid out by the Chaffee brothers from Ontario, Canada, and quite a bit of history. In fact, my grandmother's house is like a landmark now. It's preserved. And I grew up, roaming around the attic and playing in the yard. And
Sure. What was it like back then? So it was kind of a small town, like smaller than Sheridan? Or?
It was very similar to Sheridan. Didn't lock the house. And our house was actually the last house on the outskirts of town. It was surrounded by grape vineyards and orange groves and lemon groves. Lived on a bicycle. And,
rode around all over.
Oh, yeah. We could ride to the mountains and go fishing. And I never did it, but my brother would ride to the beach and or ride into Hollywood and look at the new Mercedes in the showroom or something.
Right.
It was...
back then, I imagine that was easier to do than if you tried that now.
Yeah, impossible now.
Yeah.
But, traffic literally wasn't an issue. We'd just drive into downtown L.A., park on Main Street, and go to a place called Clifton's Cafeteria. That was a big deal.
Yeah.
But it was great times.
What'd your parents do, and what was kind of your childhood like?
Oh, my father was a pipeline contractor.
Oh, okay.
Pretty much, worked by himself in a small crew and dug ditches and laid pipeline.
Yeah.
And welded, and had a kind of a welding shop at home, and I was always, I just love building stuff, like most of the kids would go to the corner store and buy a kite, and I would go cut down the bamboo and make a kite from scratch.
Yeah.
I just love building stuff.
Yep. Did that come from your dad, or is that just kind of how you've always been? You went and...
It was just kind of in my genes, I think. And pretty much... I had an older brother that was, he was a wood shop teacher.
Yeah.
And he was quite a bit older than me, so, in my teens, I spent a lot of time in his wood shop.
Okay.
And there for a while, he actually was a teacher on Catalina Island.
Okay, yeah.
So I spent quite a bit of time on Catalina Island.
And tell us your family's history. You were saying was it your grandmother's parents had the first newspaper there?
Yeah, my great-grandfather had a printing shop in a little town on the coast in Central California called Cambria. And then in my later years, I spent quite a bit of time in Cambria and Morro Bay. Pretty much just... looking back, of course you don't appreciate it at the time, but I had an amazing, fortunate childhood.
Yeah.
All my uncles and aunts, they were just really good people. And I had one uncle, during the war, he was in the 10th Mountain Division.
Okay.
And that was basically your Special Forces Green Beret type training, except for winter and mountain issues. So he taught me how to ski. Every summer we'd take a 100-mile backpack trip in the high Sierras. I mean, we were roughing it.
Yeah.
I mean, sleeping on the ground. If it rained, we had a sheet of plastic we'd huddle under.
Right.
And but we'd take these epic backpack trips. And
how old were you on those? Teenager?
Start out, I think I was 10 years old.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
And then we just did it every year. Eventually, we pretty much covered the whole John Muir Trail.
Oh, okay.
From north to south.
Yep.
In 100-mile sections.
Yep.
And And basically, if you didn't catch fish, you went to bed hungry. So,
right.
Yeah.
Go back to so your older brother. So you started out in kind of more woodworking, so carpentry type.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really liked woodworking. Then in junior high, I just kind of lived in the wood shop.
Right.
My other teachers would let me, if I built them something out of wood, I could spend the whole day in wood shop.
I can feel high school teachers cringing at that, like, oh man, letting you out of that. And
So I excelled in industrial arts.
Yes.
And the other subjects suffered a lot.
But I bet that was valuable though. That's kind of gaining a little bit of sales, right? Like, hey, I'll build you this if I can go hang out in the wood shop.
Well, then it went over to auto mechanics. So all through high school, I was repairing the English teacher, putting brakes on the English teacher's car, and the social studies,
Right.
and basically I would spend the entire day in
Doing
auto
that.
shop.
Yeah.
And I actually won an award for my industrial arts.
Okay.
And then just barely
Graduated.
graduated.
So woodworking and then industrial kind of car. Graduate high school. Was college in your future?
Well, this sounds, yeah, it was, but that was like 1968, 69.
Okay.
The height of the Vietnam War.
Right.
And one avenue to stay home would be to go to college. So I attempted to go to college and just didn't do very good. And next thing you know, I was 1A and had my physical and literally was on the brink of going in.
Over to Vietnam.
And then they came up with the lottery system, and I got a good number. And,
Gotcha.
And, looking back at my life, I call them forks in the road.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a major fork because I'd pretty much made the decision that if I did go to Vietnam, I would be a good soldier and do what I had to do.
What was that like? Because you were going to school at that time. For us, that's our recent history war is kind of like, the Iraqi freedom and Desert Storm even starting to get a little out there. So for anyone out there, like, what was it like, experiencing that as a young adult, Vietnam, possibly getting, before the lottery, it was almost full conscripted. What was that like as a young?
And I had a couple friends that never came home. So it touched me. My uncles, all three of them were in the war.
Right.
Saw, combat. And they were opposed to the war. There was even talk of, they would take me to Canada. They were really opposed to it. And, like say, then the protests, and I had a brother that was going to school in Berkeley, and when I'd go visit there, the tear gas would drift over, and all the protests.
Sure.
It was, 1969, and being 19 years old in 1969, and living in Southern California, and the Vietnam War, and music, and the rock, and the hippie.
Yep, hippie movement. Yep. Were you a hippie?
I was a hippie. Hitchhiked a lot.
Yeah.
But
well, explain the because you and I have talked. I listen to podcasts, and so that's always an interesting thing. Explain what were you like as a hippie? Because I think that gets a little misinterpreted.
Well, I always called myself a responsible hippie because when I was 20, I wanted to rent a house because I wanted to have a dog.
Okay.
And I wanted a big German Shepherd, and so I stopped in a real estate office to rent a house, and the guy goes, "Why don't you buy a house?" And so I talked to my mom. I said, "I went to rent a house, and he wants to buy it." And she goes, "I'll help you buy it." like instantly. And like my parents never, ever loaned me money or offered me anything. It was kind of like you're on your own. And so I was kind of taken back. And a couple of days later, you know, I bought a house. I was 20
At 20?
years old.
Oh, geez.
20 years old. And that was a major fork in the road because it kind of grounded me. And I took pride in the house and painted it and took care of it. But then when I talk about being a responsible hippie, I would go on these hitchhiking trips.
Sure.
And travel around California and go to different rock concerts. And you might have heard of Altamont.
Yep.
The Rolling Stone concert.
Yes.
I hitchhiked up for that one. And then, so
what
I
other?
lived this kind of carefree lifestyle. And I had a couple roommates who helped pay for the house.
Oh, awesome.
Which gave me freedom to, you know.
Yep, to go do that.
Do stuff like that.
Was, name off a couple of your favorite bands or concerts you went to.
Oh, well.
All of them. No.
Yeah, you know, like, well, just at Altamont, there was Jefferson Airplane, Santana, the Rolling Stones, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. And, you know, then I'd go to like San Francisco, the Fillmore.
Okay.
Fillmore West, and, you know, see Janis Joplin, Big Brother and the Holding Company, and just all of them.
Yeah. Would that be your definition of a hippie? Is just, you know, the kind of the freedom, you know, going to the rock concerts and traveling around?
Well, that's what I
That's your definition?
Yeah. And I had long hair, bell bottoms, and a tie-dyed T-shirt, and and put a lot of patoola on, and you know, just sleep wherever, under a bridge or whatever.
Crash on someone's couch or whatever. Yeah.
It was pretty cool in those days.
Yeah.
You know?
Just the freedom part of it. I think that's what sounds really intriguing.
Yeah. I know you asked me a question. I don't think I really ever answered any of it.
No, it was the hippie question, so that was good.
Okay.
And then, so when, so you're 20, bought a house, got roommates. What were you doing at that time? Were you still going to school or?
No, I'd dropped out.
Okay.
And ever since I'll be kind of honest, I was motivated by money. I liked stuff. You know, like I got into model cars, and I had 2 paper routes and mowed lawns to support my model airplane hobbies. You
Gotcha.
know? And then it progressed into cars and houses, and so I used to deliver the newspaper to a company called Hooker Headers, and at the time this was like. Hooker Headers was just world famous for race car exhaust systems. And I'd ride by on my bicycle, and I'd see the guys welding at Hooker Headers. And so the day I turned 18, I was in there and applied for a job, got hired, and it was brutal. It was a tough working atmosphere. But I survived, and after a couple weeks, I could do my quota, and kind of it was a rough crowd, to say the least.
Oh, sure.
Of coworkers, you know,
especially as an 18-year-old.
Yeah, there's a lot went on there. But
what was one of your first experiences of you're like, oh, like this is the type of crowd I'm working with?
Oh. I probably really can't talk about it.
Can't say? Oh, okay.
Yeah. It was kind of scary.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because that'd still be the early 60s then. Yeah. Or late 60s, I guess.
Yeah, like 69. And don't hold me down on time, the timeline. I admit it kind of
it flows
adjusted back. Depending on who I'm talking.
That's right.
You know, I think it was 69 that
Sure.
I was working at Hooker, and in a short period of time, I'd never done gas welding. That's with a torch and a flame, and then you add the rod. But I called my brother the night before I was to go in, and because I had a pretty good idea, or I was pretty sure they were going to test me. And so he taught me how to weld on the phone.
Oh, wow.
I called him up, and he goes, okay, you're going to have to do this. Open the oxygen, acetylene, adjust the gauges, open the valve, light the flame, adjust your torch. And so I went in the next day.
That's bead welding, right, I think?
Yeah, and I nailed it, and they hired me. And then after a relatively short period of time, I think like of course back then it seemed like forever, but within 3 or 4 months I had a reputation for being able to run a really beautiful weld. And then the custom department needed an employee. And that was across the street, and it was, looking back, it was like the most amazing position for me. But there was 2 of us that would build the custom exhaust system, or they're called headers for the race cars. And they would bring in, and these are the top drag racing cars in the world. Don Garlitz and Grumpy Jenkins and Dick Landy and Sox and Martin. They'd bring a car in, and then we'd spend a week or 2 building these custom one-of-a-kind exhaust systems for these race cars. So it was just an amazing job.
Yeah.
Somewhere I actually took some pictures of some of the pipes. My brother's a biologist. I call my oldest brother a physicist, but anyway, we're real science-based. But so we took this real remote road down in southern Wyoming, and there was an abandoned railroad station, and there was a black lady lived there all by herself. And my dad was he could get along with anybody. If he saw a sheep herder wagon, next thing you know, we'd be eating dinner there, or the herder would come over, and so he befriended this lady, and so we camped nearby, and we were there for quite a while, loaded up quite a few fossils. Of course, it was such a bumpy dirt road. By the time we got home, they were all busted. To think what we were doing in those days, I'm just shocked, because I think that whole area is pretty closed up, and you don't touch anything. But in those days, literally, you'd be walking and stepping on and breaking fossils.
Right.
Yeah. But anyway, I had fond memories of Wyoming, and
fossil hunting, and
And when I decided that I was going to move, I went out driving around, and this is before the internet. I'd contacted dozens of Chamber of Commerce's, old slow mail, and I had all these pamphlets on, pretty much every town in Wyoming. And just went out driving around, and I'd been to Cody, and I thought it was a little touristy, something just didn't feel good. And I was heading to Lander, Riverton area.
Okay.
And I stopped in Thermopolis, and in the gas station, the guy asked what I was doing. I said, well, I'm looking for a place to live. And he said, you ought to try that Buffalo Sheridan area. And when I drove over the mountains, I saw Buffalo in the distance, and it was a done deal.
Yep. You came over from Thermopolis, so that's
is
that 14 there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was, you come out of the mountains and you see Buffalo. And I went in the very first real estate office and met a guy named Larry Branyan. He's kind of a unique individual. And the next day I bought a little house out in New Cross.
Okay.
And I headed home to pack up.
That's awesome.
And
did you stop anywhere too in Buffalo, like the Occidental or?
Well, Larry spent the whole day.
Yeah.
I remember he was packing a gun, and I thought, well, that's different.
In his office, or no, packing it around. He had it with him all the time.
Yeah, he had a pickup.
Yeah.
There was a holster on the seat with his pistol in it or something, but. Yeah, he gave me an introduction to the area, and
got you
to
a
this day we're just very close friends.
Yeah. So talk about living in Ucross. What did you start doing for work when you moved out here?
Anything I could. I bought this little house. There really wasn't. It was a tight market in 1980, and so I bought this little house. It's $50,000. And they were building a new house at the end of the lane, and I walked down and asked if they had any work, and yeah, we need somebody to clean up the yard. So I cleaned the yard up, and then we need somebody to help frame, and next thing you know, I was a carpenter.
Yeah.
And worked on this crew, and worked on a big bank in Buffalo, but I was working as a carpenter, but then I was doing some mechanical, somebody needed a rebuild on an engine or something. I could do the mechanical, and I had the welder, so I'd just doing everything I could. It was tight. And then occasionally I would drive down to California and weld for a few weeks, and then come back and I, actually I went out to the coal mine, and I was job hunting too.
Yep.
But when I left California, my family was like, "What are you going to do in Wyoming?" And I can remember saying, "Oh, I'll figure something out." But I got moved up here. I bought a Colt, and I had to get a little book on how to break a Colt.
Sure.
And so I put up my corral and built a round pen, and step by step, I'm breaking my Colt, and finally got her where I could ride her, and just started riding literally every day. I was pretty horse crazy.
Yeah.
And
do you remember where you bought the Colt from?
Yeah, that was an interesting. I worked on a construction crew in Buffalo, and I asked around, and somebody, because I said I was looking for a horse, and a guy on the crew used to live over by Grable.
Okay.
And we drove over it was a blistering cold spring morning, and I picked out this little Colt, and we loaded her up and brought her home. And literally I had no experience at all.
Zero. Yeah.
I didn't know how to put a halter on its head, and but I got through it.
What was your Colt's name?
It was Mila, and I had her 32 years.
Oh, wow.
She was the most unbelievable horse. She put up with me, so she had to be good. But, at one point I actually went, I was in LA and took English riding lessons, because some people up here had said, yeah, the English really know,
Mm-hmm.
They know a lot.
Right. Yeah, and they've got a big history here in this area too, just bringing horses in. And so you were welding, brought your welder up, kind of doing odd jobs, got your horse. What, tell us the story of how you got into making bits and spurs.
Well, like I mentioned, I was looking for something. I actually talked to a local saddle maker, Don Butler, about apprenticing. And I'd bought some leather and was, just playing around, making some headstalls and some belts out of leather. And then one day, a neighbor lady knocked on my door, and I opened the door. She's standing there holding a bit, and she said, "My bit broke. Can you weld it together?" And I got kind of a chill. And it was like, oh my gosh, I can do this. And so I fixed her bit. And in the garage that night, I had brought with me a bucket of scrap metal. And it was basically all scrap stainless steel sailboat pieces.
Right.
and there were some rings and some rods, and so I welded up my first bit that night. And but I didn't actually finish it. I didn't put the mouthpiece in it.
Okay.
I was going to have to forge that. So the next day, I drove into town. I was going to get business cards printed, and I was desperate.
Right.
I mean, some people have the luxury of taking a hobby, and it kind of evolves. You know, they go to a yard or a market or something, and little by little.
Yep.
But I was just, one day I didn't know what I was going to do, and the next day I was. What I thought for a while was going to be a bit maker, but driving into town, I was like, I don't know anything about bits. Now, spurs, to me, are a little more mechanical.
Yep.
I kind of got the hang of what you do with a spur. So my first business cards just say Tom Balding Spurs, and I wasn't going to make bits. I was just going to focus on spurs. So I probably spent the next 6 months and building the tooling to bend and form and welding fixtures to assemble everything. And finally I got all my, pretty good, half a dozen different styles of spurs put together. And I put them in some of the local stores, King Saddlery and Don Butler's shop, but just nothing was selling, and things were getting really tight because I had pretty much quit doing. I was just totally focusing on putting this thing together.
Right.
And actually, I'd put some property up for sale. It was my dream was this beautiful piece of property on Mead Creek, and I wanted to eventually build my house.
Okay.
And it had got so tight that I had called the realtor and put my land
on the market.
And I was in this saddle maker, Don Butler's store, and I was just like, man, Don, I'm down and out. I need to sell some stuff. And he said, well, there's a horse show in Gillette this weekend. You could go set up at the horse show. Well, I didn't have any idea what that even consisted of.
Right.
So I got my card table and loaded up my 71 Ranchero and went over to Gillette. I'd planned on sleeping in my car.
Okay.
Because I didn't have any money.
Right.
And I set up at the show, and I got my little spurs set out. And within a couple hours, people were lined up.
Wow.
And I actually had to leave because I didn't have a receipt book. I hadn't taken my plan that far.
That far, yeah. Right.
So I had to leave, run down to an office supply place and get a
receipt book,
book, and started taking orders. And after 2 days, well, I had an interesting part of the story. I was all packed up, and they'd said, I'd called the horse show people in Gillette, and they said, well, you have to be there. You can't check in late,
Okay, as a vendor, you gotta.
Yeah, as a vendor, you have to be here by noon tomorrow, or not at all, or whatever. And so then that morning, I get a call from the local realtor. I won't say, he's a cool guy, and he goes, I got a full offer on your property. I go, he said, you got to come in and sign the papers. I go, well, I can't. I have to go to this horse show. He goes, well, you have to. I go, well, I can't, Yep. Can I come in Monday? And he goes, well, you just have to swear, And I go, my words, I'm good for my word. I will sell it to him,
Yeah.
So I go to the horse show. I make enough money to make my payment on my land.
Right.
And come back Monday, I call him and I go, we've got a problem
Yeah.
here.
Just had the craziest weekend. I can't sell.
This is my dream property, and I can keep it now. Well, you can't. They can sue you. And unless you come in and sit down face to face, talk to them.
Sure.
So that was.
Is that what you did?
I went. I drove in from Ucross and sat down and told the story that I just told you, and they let me out of the deal.
Awesome.
And eventually I built a beautiful house on that property.
On Mead Creek, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you sell out of all your spurs at that show?
Yeah.
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 And then did people take orders after?
I took a lot of orders. Wow. And man, I was on a roll.
Yeah.
And so the very next weekend I packed up and I went to Lolo, Montana.
Okay.
And I didn't sell anything the whole weekend. Just froze my ass off, sitting by a little stove in this cold arena and nothing, But I realized if I'm going to sell this, I have to go to them.
Mm-hmm.
That business of word of mouth wasn't working.
Right.
So then I pretty much hit the road for 12 years.
Okay.
Going, Nevada, California, and then back east, Ohio, Michigan, to horse shows.
Okay. And was that exclusive horse shows? And then did you ever start going to rodeos too, or?
No, it was the kind of the horse show people
Okay.
that carried me. But what I did learn in Gillette was everybody wanted bits.
Oh.
I mean, they're more than happy to buy a pair of spurs, but most people only need 1 or 2 pairs of spurs. But they always want bits.
Yep.
And,
well, your neighbor, that was what was broken, right? Was the bit? Yeah. And
in Gillette, I met an old time bronc rider, John Holman, and I mean, what a great guy. His nickname was Witch Holman, and he used to ride with Chris Ledoux, and he told all kinds of old-time bronc riding stories. And stuff. But he was really honest with me because he gave me some pointers, and I'd build a bit, and then he would critique it. No, this is too little or whatever, and he was just really kind of pretty rapidly built my confidence up on what to build.
Yeah.
And but always in the back of my mind, I just didn't copy anything.
Wanted it to be yours.
Yeah. I've always said the logical thing to do would have been to just copy a bit, but I just wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
And I'm not exaggerating, I have hundreds of really bizarre looking bits in my barn. And I look at them, and some of them are just like, what was I thinking? But I was just constantly trying. And then when I did start putting the bits together, I knew I could weld stainless steel to mild steel. And then I could gun blue it. You're familiar with the finish on guns. Mm-hmm. It's they boil the steel and it turns it a shiny black. And then I would weld stainless steel rings on a piece of steel. And then when I would blue it, it would be this beautiful shiny black finish with 2 silver rings.
Oh, okay.
And nobody had ever done that before. And so I could take the simplest bit and use the 2 stainless steel and mild steel, and you could literally look across the arena and see this 2-tone bit.
Yep.
And that was the key to my success.
Yeah.
In fact, it's actually a registered trademark.
Okay.
And the way it reads, I think, is using 2 dissimilar metals for an artistic value or something like that.
Sure. Awesome.
And, so
what gave you, were you just experimenting? You're like, hey, I could do this.
Well, I was looking at what was out there, and I didn't know anything about working with silver. They would normally solder silver onto. That was
okay.
Really the only way to dress something up was to to solder
it on. Okay.
Solder these silver designs on, and I'm I think kind of a minimalist. And
yeah. What's the easiest and fastest way?
I wanted my work to be more extremely functional, but minimal artistic, like over the years I'd create designs and then people would want me to solder their name on it or whatever. And I had a hard time doing that. It's like, oh, you don't want to clutter it up.
Right.
It's clean. I got over that though. Because after a few years, I learned how to engrave and work with the silver and solder it on. And
sure.
And, if you go to our website, a large part of our business is, really fancy silver adorned bits and spurs and things.
Mm-hmm.
But
when did you, let's kind of talk about that. So you're doing this probably all out of your own shop, probably at your house. When did you kind of move it to Sheridan or open up your shop right there on Riverside there?
Well, I mentioned I started in Ucross. I lived there 5 years, and I built a little garage and was working out of that. And then I sold the house, and I walked away with $10,000. And I went to Gillette, and I bought 2 motor homes.
Okay.
Or mobile homes.
Yeah.
I got 2 mobile homes for $5,000. And then I built a little road into my Mead Creek property, put in a little septic tank and a little surface well, and all the hookups for $5,000. So that's where my $10,000 went.
Okay.
I had a mobile home to live in, and I turned one of the mobile homes into a shop.
Gotcha.
And then eventually, after a couple of years, I started building my house.
Okay.
And
out there. Okay.
And so the years went by, and I was actually working out of a mobile home for like 15 years.
Okay.
And then one day the little shop heater malfunctioned and almost burned it down.
Oh no.
And I realized over the years had accumulated so many pieces of tooling and fixtures and things that it was almost invaluable. I just thought if I lost all this, I think I would find a different profession.
Sure. Right.
The thought of starting over again. So then I realized I need a good, secure building, and bought the land in Sheridan and built a beautiful shop and showroom. And now we've been there almost over 20 years.
Okay. What, because you're kind of more connected to Buffalo. What was it, just because Sheridan was a little bigger? Or?
Yeah, it just seemed like with the business, and then, of course, moving to Mead Creek,
mm-hmm.
If I needed something, I came into Sheridan.
Yep.
But, Buffalo, for years was my hometown.
Yeah.
And I love Buffalo and Sheridan as well.
Yep.
And pretty much everything we make says Sheridan, Wyoming. As the years went by, our business in Europe is pretty big part of our business. Is
okay.
All over Europe. And
how did you guys break into that market?
Actually, the sport of reining horses, where they go out and ride patterns, and that whole, lack of a better word, sport, or you have barrel racing and reining horses and cutting horses. You have the different activities that people do.
Yeah.
Anyway, reining horses, it just really picked up in Europe. And so all the American trainers were going over to Europe to put on clinics, and they were all riding with my equipment.
Gotcha.
And so, the new horse people in Europe had to have Tom Balding bits and spurs to be like the big guys.
Yep, right.
So
very cool.
That kind of it caught on pretty big, and then over the years, I started going over there and helping. Some of the stores would invite me over, and I would set up a little display at their booth at the shows and meet their customers, and And
what was one of your favorite stops?
Oh, I don't know. There was all, Germany and Italy and
All over.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then you meet lots of people and get invited back, and eventually, like Hungary and Slovakia and Austria. But I was I was at a horse show in Italy, and I don't dress like, I get kind of criticized for my casual dress. It's not typical horse kind of
I gotcha. Yep.
look. Anyway, I was at a horse show, and I was actually, standing by the arena watching them do their thing, and a guy walked up and, "Oh, where are you from?" I go, "Oh, I'm from the United States." He goes, "No, where in the United States?" "Well, I'm from Sheridan, Wyoming." He goes, "Tom Balding's from Sheridan, Wyoming." I go, "Well, I am Tom Balding."
Oh, yeah.
"No, you're not." Yeah, I had to show him a business card.
Oh, my gosh.
And then we were really good friends.
Right.
Yeah, he invited me to his booth, and we drank some wine. And anyway,
Oh, that's funny.
I thought that was so cool.
Who are kind of talking about people you've met, is there somebody that, people would be surprised to have bought bits and spurs from you, either like a celebrity or just somebody you would never think maybe owns a horse?
Yeah, well, a lot of, we wholesale to stores is a pretty big part of our business.
Okay.
But I remember walking through the Denver airport, and People magazine had some actress on the cover with her horse, and it had my bit. I think I'm not too good with.
Sure. But that's probably
A dark hair McDowell.
okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But then, like Harrison Ford, he called one day, and he couldn't decide what bit he wanted. And I'll send you, and this is the early, my catalog was just a photocopied sheet of paper, I go, "Well, I'll send you my catalog. What's your name?" And Harrison Ford. "Oh, yeah, you do sound familiar."
You've never met him though? Just send him a catalog?
Yeah, he was cool though.
Yeah. Nice over the phone and
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. But over the years there's been quite a few different Ben Johnson, he's an old school, he did movies with John Wayne and all those guys. And
how about horse trainers or rodeo athletes maybe in the last couple of years? Do they just come by the store and take a tour and see the showroom?
Yeah, pretty much all of them.
Yeah. They all have to stop by.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm just not good
at names.
That's
like
all
right.
Trevor Brazil.
Okay.
He's like the ultimate all-around world champion. I don't even know how many he's won, 20 or something.
Sure.
And he's pretty good. He's a regular customer.
Yeah.
And, pretty much all the trainers. I've been doing this, since 84.
Yep.
What is that, 36 years?
Yep, I was going to say that's close to 40 years. Yeah.
A lot of these pretty famous, notable trainers and were young kids, when I got to meet them and we built up a relationship and I use, almost without fail, whenever I design something new, I'll send it to one of the top trainers and get their real honest opinion of
what they think about it.
Potential of, and I've always been. It was funny. Somebody just asked me today, "How long does it take you to develop a new design?" And I always said, "Well, at least a year, from the original sketch to getting parts made, and then getting a prototype built, sending it out to a few different people, and getting some feedback before I really feel comfortable introducing it to the public."
Yeah.
And but
wow, that's awesome. Did you ever think when your neighbor came by and you needed to replace that bit, and then you had that idea? Did you ever think you'd be doing it for 37 years?
Well, I thought there was potential.
Yeah.
No, I never. I don't plan that far ahead. People ask, hey, can we have lunch next Wednesday? And it's like, well, that's too far ahead.
Yep.
Call me Wednesday morning.
I remember that's what you said the first time I met you. You'll have to catch me a couple times. Yep. That's fun. That's fair. People are, that's.
I just don't like being locked in to because when I commit to something, it's kind of a done deal.
Yep. We're doing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Tom, tell me a little bit about what's your role like now? Sounds like you still kind of get to design some new ones. Do you go in there and, bust out a couple, or because you guys had when I walked in, you've got quite a few employees working on different things. What's kind of your role now?
We've got 6 full-time employees. Sam has been there 30 years, and Justin and Kelly have each been there 20 years. And, long-term, it's very family, feel. I pretty much had kind of an official retirement. We hired an HR specialist to come in, and she interviewed and designated titles, because for pretty much ever, I was involved in everything.
Right.
Advertising and the marketing and the sales and the design and ordering everything. And I just had it all in my head. And
yep. So
we started, delegating all the different jobs to different people, and went through this whole process. So I kind of, quote, retired. And, for maybe close to a year, I just haven't been around the business a whole lot. But lately I've felt that, I want to, because some people say, what's going to happen to your business when you pass? Is it going to be over? And I'm like, no way. It's going to go on for a long time.
Yeah.
But I think to do that, and that I need to, I just think I still play a big part in keeping the spirit going. And I feel like I'm getting ready to design some new stuff. And then I've studied lean, it's called lean manufacturing. It's kind of a lifestyle of being organized and efficient. With the COVID, hitting last spring, I thought for sure our business was going to suffer, especially Europe market, because they were hit so hard. It dipped for a few weeks, and then it's just been unbelievable, the demand for our work. And so I just, I don't want to get any bigger. I think there's just headaches involved in that. Quality's just the bottom line, that we keep our, don't change anything. So I think to get more efficient and is just real critical for us to help kind of try to meet the demand.
Right.
And then new designs, I think, for the longevity of the business is real important to kind of keep things fresh and new.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm kind of back in the shop quite a bit these days.
Yeah, but you kind of took a step back and realized, with people kind of asking you, like, what happens, when you, which is like, I don't feel like you're that old. So that's kind of, I don't know why people are asking you, like, what happens when you pass away? It's like, well, yeah. I'm still here. But
my kids ask me.
But it's cool to hear you say, like, no, I want it to, I want a legacy of that business to go on. Outside of that, so it sounds like maybe you're kind of coming back into the creative role and designing, but what else have you been up to? We've talked about multiple times, you've gotten on those one wheels and you've built a little track at your house.
Yeah, that's an addiction. Be careful. The day I got introduced to the one wheel, a friend of mine, a local, Tony Tarver, he's a unique individual. And I look out my office window one morning, and he's doing circles in the parking area on his one wheel, and I walked out, and I've snowboarded for like 20 years and skateboarded and surfed, and so I'm kind of a board guy anyway. And I go, "Wow, what's that, Tony?" He goes, "It's a one wheel. Do you want to ride?" I go, "No, I'm going to buy one." And I went in the office, ordered one, and
you've modified yours too, haven't you?
Oh, yeah, I put different tire on it. And
yeah.
I do. Now I have two because, well, one's charging, you can ride the other one. And I travel with it. I wouldn't go anywhere without it. It's kind of a drag because you can't get them on airplanes anymore. But I did. Actually, I went to Hawaii just to ride the one wheel for 10 days.
Yeah.
And so I have now it's about 2.5 mile course. I'd call it a race track.
Racetrack.
Yeah. It's a trail system on my property. Originally, I built it for mountain biking because I really love mountain biking.
Mm-hmm.
And for 10 years, it was a mountain biking course, and now it's
a one-wheel racetrack.
A one-wheel deluxe. The turns are all banked.
Yeah.
And there's like a dozen one wheels in Sheridan.
Yeah.
Now, so.
Yeah, and especially now with it getting warmer, I think everyone's going to bust them out.
Yeah.
And, yep. What else keeps you busy? I know you're a car guy, and I think everybody knows if it's you driving around in that white Mustang.
Yeah. Is that badass or what?
It is. I love it.
Yeah.
I can tell, I know it's you when I hear it, and then you're driving by. So, no, that's awesome. I love it. What year is it?
It's a 65.
Okay.
Called a K-Code Fastback Mustang. I bought it for $300 in 1969. No. Yeah. And so there's a lot of memories in that thing.
Oh, yeah.
But last winter, I put a whole new drivetrain in it, a really nice 5-speed manual transmission and clutch. And I've had it over 50 years, and it drives better than it ever has. And, if it's not snowing, I'm driving the Mustang.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. What else keeps you busy? I know you and Charlie have always talked about going on some ski trips, some snowboarding trips.
Yeah, snowboarding, backpacking, fishing.
We missed the window this year, but we'll pick up next year.
Anything else that keeps you busy, Tom?
Oh, I just gardening.
Okay.
Yeah,
you just like keeping busy, I think. You trying new stuff and
it's kind of there's times I'll take like a month-long trip, and I'm home like within 12 hours. I'm pacing. Like, I've got to do something.
Yeah, you got to do something. Yeah.
It's like, just calm down. Just take a day off.
Take a break. I do want to finish, Tom. You kind of mentioned it already. Last spring, kind of about this time exactly. The world, was dealing with COVID. You guys were probably sitting there thinking, what's going to happen with those European markets? But we've all survived. We're all back. What do you expect to see since you've been out here for such a long time? Actually, what do you expect to see this year, this summer, in regards to Sheridan? And kind of the rodeo. Are you getting out of town? What do you kind of see for this summer?
Oh, well, I think going through the kind of, because my daughter and I kind of isolated at I have 45 acres just east of town.
Yeah.
And, it was just amazing and quiet and peaceful. I was able to slow down and worked on just things on the property that I'd put off for 20 years, And, but
you start to notice when you're stuck there.
I'm just so into my property and the stream. I'm working with Joey's Fly Fishing Foundation and Steady Stream, Tina at Steady Stream Hydrology, as far as possibly building some features into the stream. I was real involved with a stream habilitation project with the Department of Agriculture to kind of repair the stream from overgrazing for 100 years.
Sure.
And I'm a little more content to just stay home and the gardening and the one-wheeling. And I got a new electric unicycle, and that's...
You're telling me about that.
Kind of ratchets up things a bit.
Sure. Yeah.
My goal is to ride it to Buffalo and back by the end of summer.
Ooh, there you go.
Yeah. Take the back road.
Yep, through you across there, and yeah.
But you know what? I don't know. It's a different. I think people's appreciation. It's affected everybody. You know. I think to be able to slow down and appreciate where we live. I think. And then the influx of new people. You know, you see some of these cities that are just exploding, Bozeman, and you know, that's a concern, a growth.
Yep. We're seeing it a little bit, but I don't think as much as like Bozeman or, you know, I think Cheyenne's probably growing too, but.
I think, you know, we have to be careful because what we love so much could be gone.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. Like you just said, you got to be reflective and kind of be appreciative of what we have and how it's set up. So, Charlie, do you have any questions for Tom at all?
I think we caught Charlie sleeping.
No, I don't think so.
No, we covered a lot there, Tom. But well, I appreciate you coming by. Real quick, if anyone is listening, I don't know how big our horse owners or trainers are on this show, but how can people find you in your work? You guys have a website. You know, what is that?
Yeah, tombalding.com.
Okay.
And there's a lot of videos. I think you can find them on the website or just go on YouTube and type in Tom Balding.
We didn't talk about this. When was that Discovery Channel episode? Do you remember? Or?
Like 10 years ago.
Okay.
That was a big moment.
Yeah. Did they approach you? Like, how did that happen?
You know, I watched that show one night, and at the end they go, if you know of a business or a product you'd like to see made, get in touch with us. So I went in the office the next morning. I said, contact the Discovery Channel and tell them about us. And then about a week later, my secretary stuck her head in the shop and goes, somebody from the Discovery Channel wants to talk to you.
Oh, man.
Yes.
Wow. So it was just that easy. Just gave him a call and kind of gave you
If you don't take the shot, you'll never make the basket.
Yeah.
You know?
That's awesome. I don't think anybody probably knows that that's all it took is you were just like watching their show and you're like, oh, we'll give them a call.
Yeah.
How was that experience when they came to the shop?
I loved it.
Yeah.
You know, just watching. I appreciate technology and the videotaping and the lighting. They'd spend 2 or 3 hours setting up lights. There's one scene where I had to crawl on the floor and go through a little hole to get to my little welding bench.
Okay.
Because they wanted to film me welding, and then they only used like 5 seconds for that clip, you know.
Right.
But,
that's cool.
they got to the shop, and I gave them a tour and showed them. We'd pretty much had laid out what we were going to do, and they made some phone calls, and they said, we're going to do 3 shows.
Wow.
There's just too much here. We're going to do 3 separate shows.
Awesome.
If you Google it, it's like how it's made bits, and then there's a one on spurs and and they wanted me to make a belt buckle, and I'd never made a belt buckle before. I thought it was a good time to start.
Yeah, well, might as well learn, right?
So if you watch the one on a belt buckle, that's the first buckle.
How long were they in total here in town?
Oh, I think 5 full days at my shop.
Yeah.
And then we had an awesome party out at my house.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. That was cool.
Awesome. Well, I remember that because I was on the website earlier, and so you were mentioning the website. So I was like, oh, yeah, we have to ask him about that. So
yeah,
that's amazing. Well, that's all I had, Tom, unless there was something you wanted to talk about. But
no, I'm good.
Awesome. Well,
hope I didn't bore you.
No, that was fantastic. No, I grew up here, so getting to hear your story and to hear about how you started the business and kind of how you operate, it's really cool, and I hope people enjoy it. And if you guys haven't, I'd recommend, because I've been in the showroom a couple times, some really cool stuff, and I would imagine the staff will give you a tour if it's not too.
Yeah, well, with the COVID, we cut back on that.
Okay.
And then reality kind of hit us that, I mean, for 20 years, we gave sometimes half a dozen tours a day.
Sure.
And it just really wasn't practical to run our business. And now that we're so far behind, we kind of limited, but if you reach out to me personally, I can arrange it.
Arrange a tour. All right.
And actually our showroom right now is only open on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Okay.
And but one thing I'd like to mention, over the years, I've given just dozens of tours to a lot of the school kids, young, college to grade school. And I guess one thing that I try to encourage or show kids or young people is that, don't be afraid to, give it a shot. And I tend to say I've tried a lot of stuff, and a lot of it just didn't work out very good. I wasn't a failure, it just didn't work out too good.
Yeah.
And,
that's a good way to say that.
Yeah. And you learn so much, when things don't go just planned.
Right.
Yeah. You can learn as much from succeeding.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's a great way to say that, and I think we'll end out with that. But, well, Tom, thanks again. And if you guys want, again, go check out tombalding.com, right? Tombalding.com is the website. And Tom, thanks again.
You bet.